What happens when a superstar sits down with The View's most controversial hosts and things go completely off the rails? You won't believe what unfolds when Jennifer Lopez faces off against Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, and Whoopi Goldberg in what becomes one of the most explosive confrontations in daytime television history. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below because you're not going to believe what unfolds. Last night's episode of The View was supposed to be a standard celebrity appearance to promote Jennifer Lopez's latest projects. What viewers witnessed instead was a masterclass in media manipulation and celebrity ambush that left America's sweetheart walking off set in disgust. The tension was palpable from the moment J.Lo stepped onto that familiar set, and what started as seemingly innocent questions quickly devolved into a coordinated attack that exposed the ugly underbelly of daytime television. The stage was set for disaster from the opening moments. As Jennifer Lopez walked out in a stunning emerald green blazer, the audience erupted in applause, but something felt different in the air. The hosts exchanged knowing glances, and veteran viewers of The View could sense that this wasn't going to be the typical promotional softball interview. Whoopi's opening remarks carried an edge that immediately put Lopez on the defensive. "So Jennifer, welcome back to The View," Whoopi began, her voice carrying that familiar gravitas that's made her both beloved and feared in equal measure. "We're always happy to have you here, though I have to say, there's been quite a lot of conversation about some of your recent business ventures and personal choices that I think our audience would love to hear your perspective on." The camera caught Jennifer's micro-expression, a brief flash of confusion mixed with wariness. This wasn't the warm welcome she'd expected, and seasoned performers like Lopez know how to read a room. Something was off, and she could feel it in her bones. "Thank you for having me, Whoopi. I'm always happy to be here with you ladies," Jennifer responded diplomatically, but her media-trained smile couldn't quite mask the uncertainty in her eyes. She glanced briefly at her publicist in the wings, who was frantically checking her phone, clearly caught off guard by the hostile opening. Joy Behar, never one to let an opportunity for controversy slip by, immediately pounced on the opening Whoopi had created. "Jennifer, let's talk about your recent business partnerships and some of the criticism you've been facing about cultural appropriation and your various business ventures. Some people are saying you're out of touch with your fan base and the Latino community that made you famous." The question hit like a slap across the face. This wasn't on the pre-approved list of topics that Jennifer's team had submitted weeks ago. The agreement was clear. They'd discuss her upcoming projects, maybe touch on her family life, and keep things light and promotional. Instead, Joy had immediately gone for the jugular, with accusations that cut to the core of Jennifer's identity and career. "I'm sorry, Joy, but I think there might be some confusion about what we agreed to discuss today," Jennifer said, her voice taking on a steely quality that anyone who's followed her career would recognize as a warning sign. "My team specifically outlined the topics for today's conversation, and this wasn't one of them." Sunny Hostin, the legal mind of the group, leaned forward with the predatory smile of someone who smells blood in the water. "Well, Jennifer, as public figures, don't you think we have a responsibility to address the concerns of our communities? I mean, you've built your entire brand on representing Latina women, but some of your recent choices seem to contradict that image." The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. Jennifer's jaw tightened visibly, and those who know her personally would recognize the warning signs. Jennifer Lopez didn't get to where she is by backing down from fights, but she also knows how to pick her battles. This wasn't supposed to be one of them. "Sunny, I've spent my entire career opening doors for Latino artists and creating opportunities in industries where we weren't represented. I'm proud of my heritage and everything I've accomplished for my community," Jennifer fired back, her voice rising slightly above the diplomatic tone she'd maintained since sitting down. But the hosts weren't backing down. If anything, they seemed emboldened by her defensive response. Whoopi jumped back into the fray with the kind of pointed commentary that's made her both a respected voice and a lightning rod for controversy. "That's all well and good, Jennifer, but actions speak louder than words, don't they? Some of your business partnerships and personal relationships have raised eyebrows about whether you're still connected to those roots you claim to be so proud of." The personal attack was the final straw for Jennifer's composure. Her media training kicked in, but cracks were starting to show in her polished exterior. The audience could sense the shift in energy, the way the air in the studio seemed to crackle with tension. Whoopi, I came here today to talk about my work, my art, and my upcoming projects. I didn't come here to be lectured about my personal life, or to defend my authenticity to people who don't know me, Jennifer said, her voice carrying the kind of controlled fury that comes from years of dealing with media attacks. Joy, sensing weakness, pressed harder. But Jennifer, when you're a public figure making millions of dollars off the backs of fans who look up to you, don't you think you owe them some accountability? Some people are saying you've lost touch with your roots, that you're more interested in Hollywood glamour than staying true to who you are. The attack was personal, calculated, and designed to provoke exactly the kind of reaction that makes for viral television moments. Jennifer's hands clenched in her lap, a telltale sign that the famously controlled performer was reaching her breaking point. Joy, I don't know what kind of show you think you're running here, but this ambush isn't what I signed up for, Jennifer snapped, her diplomatic mask finally slipping completely. I've been nothing but respectful to you and your show, and this is how you repay that courtesy? But the hosts weren't done. In fact, they were just getting started, and what happened next would push this confrontation to a point of no return that would leave everyone watching stunned. Sunny Hostin, with the calculated precision of a prosecutor delivering a closing argument, pulled out a tablet and began reading what appeared to be prepared notes. Jennifer, let's talk specifics. Your recent beauty line launch party. Do you want to explain why there wasn't a single Latino-owned business represented among your major sponsors? And what about the controversy surrounding your daughter's quinceañera? Some people are calling it a publicity stunt. The mention of her children was the nuclear option, and everyone in the studio knew it. Jennifer's entire demeanor shifted from controlled frustration to barely contained rage. Her publicist in the wings was making frantic hand gestures, but it was too late. The line had been crossed. Excuse me? Jennifer's voice dropped to a dangerously low register. Did you just bring my daughter into this? Are you fucking kidding me right now? The expletive hung in the air like a thunderclap, and the studio audience gasped collectively. This was live television, and America had just witnessed one of their biggest stars lose her composure completely. Whoopi, rather than diffusing the situation, seemed to relish the chaos she'd helped create. Jennifer, there's no need for that language. We're just asking legitimate questions that your fans want answered. If you can't handle a little scrutiny, maybe you shouldn't be in the public eye. The condescending tone was the match that lit the fuse. Jennifer stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor with a sound that cut through the tension like a knife. A little scrutiny? You ambush me on live television, attack my business choices, question my heritage, and then drag my children into your petty bullshit. And you call that legitimate journalism? Joy Behar, never one to back down from a fight, leaned back in her chair with a smug expression that suggested she was enjoying every moment of Jennifer's meltdown. Well, if the shoe fits, Jennifer, you've made your career off being America's sweetheart. But maybe it's time people saw the real you, the diva who can't handle a few tough questions. The insult was calculated and cruel, designed to strip away years of carefully crafted public image. Jennifer's hands were shaking now, whether from rage or the adrenaline of being under attack, and her voice took on the kind of edge that comes from someone who's been pushed too far. The real me? Jennifer laughed bitterly, the sound echoing through the silent studio. You want to see the real me? The real me is someone who's worked her ass off for 30 years to get respect in an industry that constantly tries to tear down women like me. The real me is someone who's opened doors for countless Latino artists while you three sit here in your privileged bubble judging everyone else. Sunny, not content to let Jennifer gain any momentum, jumped back in with another prepared attack. Jennifer, let's talk about your recent relationship history. Some people are saying you use high-profile relationships as publicity stunts. What do you say to critics who think you're more interested in headlines than genuine connections? The personal attack on her romantic life was the final violation of every boundary that should exist between interviewer and guest. Jennifer's eyes blazed with fury, and when she spoke, her voice carried the kind of controlled venom that only comes from someone who's reached their absolute limit. Are you out of your goddamn mind? Jennifer spat, her composure completely shattered. You think you can sit there and psychoanalyze my personal relationships on national television? Who the hell do you think you are? But Whoopi wasn't finished. In fact, she seemed energized by Jennifer's anger, feeding off the chaos like a vampire feeding on blood. Jennifer, you're the one who puts your relationships in the public eye. You can't cherry-pick when you want privacy and when you want publicity. That's not how this works. The hypocrisy was staggering, and Jennifer wasn't going to let it slide. Oh, that's rich coming from you, Whoopi. When was the last time any of you faced this kind of interrogation on your own show? When was the last time someone dragged your personal lives through the mud for entertainment? Joy, sensing that Jennifer was gaining the upper hand, decided to go for the most personal attack yet. Maybe because we're not constantly seeking attention and validation through our relationships and business ventures. Some of us have actual substance beyond our love lives and brand partnerships. The room fell silent, except for the sound of Jennifer's breathing, which was now audible through her microphone. The camera caught every detail of her face, the flush of anger, the tightness around her eyes, the way her jaw was clenched so hard it looked painful. This was a woman who had been pushed past every reasonable limit. Substance? Jennifer's voice was deadly quiet now, which somehow made it more frightening than her earlier outburst. You want to talk about substance? I've built multiple successful businesses, created opportunities for hundreds of people, and used my platform to advocate for causes I believe in. What exactly have any of you accomplished besides sitting behind this desk and tearing down successful women? The accusation hit its mark. For the first time since the ambush began, the hosts looked genuinely uncomfortable. But instead of backing down, they doubled down on their attack strategy. Sunny leaned forward aggressively, her legal training evident in the way she structured her next assault. Jennifer, that's a deflection. We're asking about your recent choices and whether they align with the values you claim to represent. Your fans deserve honest answers, not angry outbursts and defensive posturing. The gaslighting was masterful and cruel. They had orchestrated this entire ambush, violated every agreement about the interview topics, brought her children into the discussion, attacked her personal relationships, and now they were trying to frame her justified anger as unreasonable behavior. Jennifer looked around the studio as if seeing it clearly for the first time, the cameras capturing every moment of her humiliation, the audience watching her destruction like it was entertainment, the hosts who had lured her here under false pretenses and were now trying to destroy her reputation for ratings. You know what? Jennifer said, her voice taking on a new quality. Not anger anymore, but something harder and more resolved. I see exactly what this island. This isn't journalism. It's not even entertainment. This is a coordinated hit job, and I'm done playing your sick game. She reached for her microphone pack, her movements deliberate and controlled despite the fury coursing through her veins. You want to know about substance? Here's some substance for you. I have too much self-respect to sit here and let you use me for your ratings grab. But as Jennifer began to remove her microphone, Whoopi made one final, devastating move that would push this confrontation into territory that no one could have predicted. Before you run away, Jennifer, Whoopi called out with theatrical flair, maybe you should explain to our audience why your own mother refuses to speak to certain media outlets about your behavior behind closed doors. We received some very interesting calls before today's show. The studio fell into a stunned silence that felt like it lasted an eternity. Jennifer's hands froze on her microphone pack, and for a moment, the mask of celebrity composure slipped completely, revealing raw vulnerability underneath. The mention of her mother was beyond any line that should ever be crossed in civilized discourse, and everyone in that room knew it. What did you just say? Jennifer's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried through the studio microphones with crystal clarity. The cameras zoomed in on her face, capturing every nuance of shock, hurt, and building rage. This wasn't just about her anymore. They had dragged her family into their sick game. Joy Behar, emboldened by Whoopi's nuclear option, decided to pile on with cruel enthusiasm. Jennifer, we're just saying that maybe there's a pattern here. When your own family starts distancing themselves from your public persona, maybe it's time for some self-reflection. The lie was so blatant, so obviously fabricated for maximum damage, that even some audience members began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was character assassination being broadcast live to millions of viewers. Jennifer slowly straightened up, and when she turned to face the hosts, her expression had transformed into something that made the temperature in the studio seem to drop 10 degrees. This was no longer the polished performer they had been trying to break. This was a woman who had found her line in the sand and was prepared to defend it with everything she had. "You sick, pathetic bitches," Jennifer said, her voice carrying the kind of quiet fury that's more terrifying than any scream. "You orchestrated this entire ambush. You attacked my career, my heritage, my relationships, my children, and now you're making up lies about my mother? What kind of human beings are you?" Sunny, perhaps finally realizing they had gone too far, tried to backpedal. "Jennifer, there's no need to get hostile. We're just trying to have an honest conversation about—" "Honest?" Jennifer cut her off with a laugh that held no humor whatsoever. "You want honest? Here's honest. You three are everything that's wrong with media today. You're mean-spirited, vindictive bullies who get your kicks from trying to destroy successful women for ratings." She ripped the microphone pack from her waist and slammed it down on the coffee table with such force that the sound reverberated through the studio like a gunshot. "You want to know why I'm successful? Because I don't tear down other women to build myself up. Because I create instead of destroy. Because I have integrity, something you clearly wouldn't recognize if it slapped you in your fake faces." Whoopi, perhaps sensing that the interview had spiraled completely out of their control, tried to regain some semblance of authority. "Jennifer, if you can't handle legitimate criticism, maybe you should reconsider your career choices." The gaslighting attempt was met with a withering stare that could have melted steel. Jennifer gathered her purse and stood up, her movements sharp and decisive. "Legitimate criticism? Is that what you call fabricating stories about my family? You're not journalists. You're tabloid vultures feeding on manufactured drama." She turned to address the audience directly, bypassing the hosts entirely. "To everyone watching at home, this is what happens when you trust people who smile to your face and then try to stab you in the back for entertainment. These women invited me here under false pretenses and then ambushed me with lies and personal attacks." Joy made one last desperate attempt to maintain control of the narrative. "Jennifer, you're being dramatic. We ask tough questions that your fans deserve answers to." "Dramatic?" Jennifer whirled around, her eyes blazing. "You fabricated stories about my mother, attacked my children, and questioned my authenticity based on absolutely nothing. And I'm being dramatic for calling you out on it?" She walked toward the edge of the stage, her high heels clicking against the floor like a countdown to Judgment Day. "You know what? I feel sorry for you, all three of you. You had a chance to have a real conversation with someone who's achieved actual success, and instead you chose to try to tear me down for cheap thrills." Sunny made one final desperate grab for the moral high ground. "Jennifer, we're just trying to hold public figures accountable." "Accountable for what?" Jennifer spun around one last time, her voice rising to fill the entire studio. "For being successful? For working hard? For not fitting into whatever box you think I should stay in? You want accountability? How about you account for wasting everyone's time with this pathetic excuse for television?" She paused at the edge of the stage and delivered her final, devastating blow. "You know what the real tragedy is here? Millions of women look up to you three as role models, and this is how you choose to use your platform to tear down other women with lies and manufactured outrage. You should be ashamed of yourselves." The silence that followed was deafening. The hosts sat frozen in their chairs, finally realizing the magnitude of what they had done and how badly it had backfired. The audience was completely quiet, absorbing the raw authenticity of Jennifer's words after 30 minutes of choreographed cruelty. Jennifer looked directly into the main camera one final time. "To my real fans out there, thank you for your support. Don't let anyone tell you that success means you have to accept being treated like garbage. Know your worth, demand respect, and never let bullies like these make you feel small." With that, Jennifer Lopez walked off the View's stage with her head held high, leaving behind three hosts who had learned too late that some people refuse to be broken for entertainment. The camera lingered on the empty chair where she had been sitting, a stark reminder of the consequence of crossing lines that should never be crossed. As the show cut to commercial, viewers across America were left with one undeniable truth. They had just witnessed a masterclass in dignity under fire, and it wasn't delivered by the hosts behind the desk. Jennifer Lopez had walked into an ambush and emerged victorious, proving that real strength isn't about avoiding conflict, but about maintaining your integrity when others try to tear you down. The aftermath in the studio was immediate and brutal. Producers scrambling, executives making emergency calls, and 3 hosts finally realizing they had picked a fight with the wrong woman. Jennifer Lopez had given them exactly what they deserved, and America had watched every devastating moment of their well-deserved humiliation.